Hello and welcome to the All About Respect Bystander Intervention Training. My name is Dr. Natalie Norris and I'm a lecturer in mental health and wellbeing and education at the University of York.
And my name's Dr. Anna Macklin and I'm a lecturer in psychology, focusing particularly on forensic psychology at York St John University.
So today we're going to take you through the Bystander Intervention Training. Before we begin, we'd like to make it very clear that we cover some very sensitive material. On the website where you found the training, there's a number of support materials and support sites that you can use should you become upset or feel that you need to talk to somebody about the material that we cover. At moments in the training, you can pause and you can think about some of the things we're talking about and restart the video. There's also moments where we actually ask you to pause and think about some of the things that we're asking. So there's short quizzes and activities to undertake as you go through. So at this moment in time, you might find it helpful to pause the video, get a pen and a piece of paper so you can note down any responses to questions that you may have, which you might find helpful as we work through the material. Just remember that the slides are available to download and all the material is hyperlinked in the slides should you want to come back to it or look at the original sources that we've used to develop the training. Please be aware in the training that we very rarely talk about victims and perpetrators. This reflects some of the work that Anna and I do in our research world, where we very rarely talk about these terms. Instead, we tend to talk about people who are victimised or those who experience these behaviours and those who maybe perpetrate these behaviours. We also very rarely talk about victims and perpetrators in a gendered way, so we don't often talk about males as perpetrators and females as victims. So even though statistically we tend to see that that is the pattern, we tend to take a gender neutral approach to the different roles that we see when we're talking about sexual violence. A key message that you'll hear us mention time and time again as we go through the training is that we're trying to empower people to act as pro-social bystanders, but only ever when it is safe to do so. We would never advocate people putting themselves in a situation where they could themselves be in harm's way or cause harm to other people.
So in this training, as Natalie mentioned, we are going to be focusing on fairly sensitive material in relation to sexual violence. And the training aims to provide you with knowledge about bystander behaviour and the types of behaviour that bystanders may intervene in. We really aim to equip you with a toolkit of skills that can be used to facilitate bystander behaviour. And we hope to empower you all in becoming active bystanders. And as we've already mentioned, there will be lots of opportunities throughout the training to actually pause, reflect on what we've just been discussing, engage in some activities, and also we will signpost you to additional resources as well.
So, we're going to start with what do we mean by a bystander? Well, bystanders are present in all sorts of everyday situations. You might want to take a look at the cartoon that's on your screen now and think about what might be going on here. And think about, have you ever seen or heard behaviours like this when you've just been going around your day-to-day business, whether you're at work, school or college? Have you ever seen or heard anything like this? Because you may recognise that this is an example of street harassment, where you've got an individual here who is making a comment at somebody else here, but around them we've got three individuals. These are our bystanders. These are people who witness a situation but are not directly involved as either the person being victimised or as the perpetrator of those acts. So when we're talking about bystanders, we can either talk about people being passive bystanders, so those are individuals who don't do anything, or we can talk about active or pro-social bystanders. Those are individuals who actually get involved and try to do something about the situation that they're witnessing. So the aim of this training is to try and empower people to take a more active role in situations that they deem to be problematic, but only ever when it is safe to do so.
So now that you have an awareness of the different types of bystanders, we'd like you to pause and think about a situation when you have been a bystander and something problematic has potentially occurred. Think about your role in the event. Did you act as an active or as a passive bystander? And what sort of factors do you think affected your decision to intervene or not?
So hopefully you managed to think about a situation, because there are all sorts of times when we may actively intervene or not intervene.
So when bystanders consider whether to take action or not, there are 5 stages that they will pass through. Initially, you have to be able to just notice an event occurring around you. You then need to be able to identify that this is actually an event where something problematic is occurring that you may need to intervene in. You then must feel a sense of personal responsibility to help, and you also then need the skills and confidence to actually be able to provide support. And finally, you will take action. And in this training, we aim to try and map the training onto those 5 distinct stages. So we aim to provide you with background knowledge about sexual violence, which will help you to identify sexual harm in the social groups that you may be interacting in. We hope through empowering you to have more knowledge and awareness about sexual harm, you will feel a sense of personal responsibility to intervene when it is appropriate. And by equipping you with a toolkit of skills, this will also help you feel confident in actually knowing how to intervene in these problematic situations. But as we've already mentioned, the key message is that you should only intervene when it is actually safe for you to do so. Now, obviously, there may well be barriers that can affect how likely you are to actually be able to engage in each of these 5 stages. And what we're going to do next is look at some of the barriers that there may be to intervening.
So if we go back to the first cartoon that we had a look at, you'll remember that there are 3 individuals around who are bystanders. There's all sorts of different reasons why we may decide not to intervene in a situation. And you may want to think about the example you thought of when we paused and reflected a few slides ago about the activity where you either intervened or didn't intervene. What made you intervene, or what do you think played a role in your not intervening? And just have a think about those things as we talk about some of these different reasons. Because evidence suggests that reasons why people don't intervene can be related to these 5 different categories. First of all, there's what's known as the diffusion of responsibility. If we're in a large group and there's lots of people around, then we may assume that other people are going to help the individual. So this person here might have noticed that this person and this person are also present and may assume that they're going to be the ones who actually do something about the situation. Another issue is, are we scared of retaliation? If we were to get involved and maybe tackle this individual by challenge what they're doing or saying, or try and help this individual here, is there a risk that we might become at harm? Would this person here turn on us and start shouting abuse at us? It's a common response when we see problematic situations. Do we become scared? Do we become afraid? And we are never advocating that people intervene into those situations. There are just different types of interventions that you can use. Another important factor is what's known as social influence or social identity. Do you identify with or empathise with the person who's the target or the victim in that situation? So we often intervene if it's a person who's similar to ourselves. Or if we have children, are we more likely to intervene if we see a child being mocked or picked on in the street? There's an element of identity there that plays a role which maybe encourages us to intervene. There's also a risk with some forms of behaviour that we worry that maybe we're misinterpreting the situation. Maybe we've got it wrong. Maybe I'm the only person who's uncomfortable and everybody else in this situation is fine. This is what's known as pluralistic ignorance. This idea that maybe we're worried that we've misinterpreted that situation. And related to that is what's known as audience inhibition. If I were to step forward and intervene in some way, maybe challenging the person who's making the inappropriate comments, other people around me may judge me. So they may judge me for being too critical or intervening when they feel I shouldn't have done. But we worry that we're going to be judged for fear that we maybe have misinterpreted that situation. But what's important to highlight here is that often, if we see a situation that is problematic, it's often the case where we're not the only ones who are uncomfortable. Often it only takes one person to step forward and challenge a situation to encourage other people as well to step forward and also voice their opinions on that situation. It's a matter of being the first one to take the first step to intervene. So we've talked you through a number of different theoretical backgrounds to bystander intervention, what's known as bystander theory, and issues related to social norms and sexual violence. If you find this interesting or would like some more information, please click on the links on these slides where you can find more information online.